Right. We will talk more about these international human shields later. For now, we're just going to take the audience to our second video, which will be taking a look at the olive pressing industry and the olive wood industry. Right. Over to you, tech team.
Separated from the water. هدول زجاجكو هدول زجاجكو And of course, oil is not the only outcome of the process, because the olive is used to the limits. The hard leftover of the olive press is this stuff that people also take home and use it for heating in winter. So from the olives, like not one drop of the olive goes to waste. So here's the process from like an olive all the way until it becomes drops of precious olive oil. So many of the art crafts that are made are targeting Christian pilgrims, because the majority of the pilgrims towards Palestine that are allowed to come by the state of Israel, they come from Christian majority countries. This is a large workshop. قديش عيلة بتستفيد من أول شغلة؟
شغيدة كانت قبل الكورونا 27 بس بعد الكورونا صار عندها تقريبا 13.
So before the coronavirus, this factory used to provide for about 27 families, and now it's down to 13. يعطي العافية. So from an economic point of view, the olive tree has nearly 40% of our productive economy is related to the olive tree itself. So it's very, very, very important. It provides jobs for people who are involved in the harvesting, who are involved in the soap making, who are involved in the olive wood crafts, all of which are, like ways of contribution to the livelihoods of people. Of course, it doesn't make people billionaires, because like being a billionaire is not part of our culture. It's like Jesus, who was born on this land, said that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to come into the kingdom of heaven. So like in our culture, like people would get enough to survive, and olive trees have been providing people enough for survival. So I wouldn't say like we have people who are multimillionaires because of the olive wood. There are a few exceptions, but once again, this is not the rule. We have olive wood, we have olive oil, we have olive soap, and a huge economy that comes from around this tree. The destruction of one olive tree means the elimination of that livelihood once and for all. So when we're talking about the elimination or destruction of 1 million olive trees, we are talking about the destruction of the livelihoods of hundreds of Palestinian families. The families that are involved in the olive harvest this season are about 120,000. So when you eliminate like nearly 1/8 of the olive trees, then you eliminate the income of 1/8 of Palestinian families. And it's not like you destroy it and then they will be able to revive themselves. The growth of an olive tree takes like 10 years to continue to start producing the average production. So it's about 10 years. So what the state of Israel destroys now needs hundreds and hundreds of years to be balanced. When the Israelis destroy 1,000 years old tree, and we plant a tree in the planting season, the tree we plant today will replace the Israeli destroyed one in 1,000 years, not immediately. Those of us who are involved in the olive planting are aware of the fact that when we plant olive trees, we are not replacing the Israeli destruction, but we are trying to give a chance that maybe in 1,000 years we will be able to replace that destruction. Also, it provides for the livelihoods of people, and once it's destroyed, that livelihood is also is affected. So I want you to know that the destruction of the olive trees is not something like you lose once in your lifetime. It's a loss you sustain for your entire life. And once again, when they destroy 1,000 years old olive tree, you can't replace that in a year or two. This is why we also call upon people to help with the planting of olive trees in Palestine. Not because we want to replace the trees that they destroy today. It's because we want to plant something today, so in the future, hopefully, the destruction will be balanced. So these are important things to mention, I think. So you see the fruit, you can't pick it and eat it. No, it's very bitter. Like for you to eat an olive, you need to pickle it, which is soak it in salt, some sugar and vinegar and lemon for 3 months before it's ready to be eaten. You can eat it if you press it in the olive press, in the olive mill, and then you can eat the oil. And the freshly pressed oil is very, very, very delicious. At least for me. Like not many people like it, but I love it. But literally, it's a bad idea to actually just pick the fruit and put it in your mouth. It's a very bad idea. Through my work, I've seen a lot of people who are so excited that they see a lot of olives and then, okay, I will taste one, and that will always be a bad idea. But it needs to be processed, and this is kind of like the genius thing in the ancient civilizations. It's like they know that everything needs to be processed before it can be good for human consumption. The olive oil produced from this tree in particular is the most expensive olive oil I know about, and probably the most expensive in Palestine. Palestinian olive oil is already expensive. The leaves are used only for the compost. It's like, you know, in few years it becomes part of the soil. That is the trunk of the same tree, exactly. So this is how frustrating the growth of an olive tree is. The root of the olive tree is the root of a wild olive tree. Wild olive trees never die. So 4,000 plus years ago, this tree was a wild root. You know, the wild roots shoot sprouts like this, you know, and then this sprout is grafted with a productive olive branches. So the first graft of this tree is what you see over here, you know. This is kind of the first graft of the tree. So like the olive tree itself is not like just a root you plant in the land and that's it. No, it's like a process where you graft the root with productive branches. So it's a long and frustrating kind of. You have to be like very patient and be able to look into the future. Like when we plant olive trees, we plant them hoping that the hands that will pick them will not know our names, you know? So it's a very selfless thing. Like it's one of the most selfless things I know about the Palestinian culture, where you literally plant trees for the future generations, many of which will not even know what your name is or why you did it. They know that you did it out of generosity, and that's it. You determine the age by the size of the trunk, and like right now, it's not like you have to cut it and see how many circles, because you can't do that. It's like genetic testing. For the olive trees, it's always genetic testing. Like the ancient olive tree that we saw was tested by some people, I think, either from Japan or Korea. And then they were like, yeah, this has been around for more than 4,500 years. But we do not know exactly. Because many of the trees were planted before our lifetimes. And we are, you know, we are disconnected from the generations that actually planted it. So we have estimations. For a Palestinian to produce a ton of olives, he needs 0 water. For an Israeli to produce a ton of olives, they have to waste about 5,000 cubic meters of water, you know? And when you live in a place where water, like where Palestinians are denied, you know, access to water, you know, it's just like, it's a huge crime. Yeah. This is like how pruning look like. So you prune the branches, and then you have somebody like picking the branches.
You look kind of comfortable. I was about to say, you look like balance.
This is the Israeli apartheid wall, yeah. And it separates Palestinians from Palestinians and Palestinians from their land, you know? It was a miracle that this ancient tree was saved, you know?
Oh, wow, that was very interesting video, I would say. Hi, Baha. There's a lot of important facts in the video just now, I think. And like you mentioned about the end products and the economy and even the water needed to grow the trees, both in Israel and in Palestine. That was an interesting take, but I would like to start with the lighter notes. shares the question from the Zoom chat, which is, what do they make from the crushed fruit pulp? Because of we can see the oil, but can you mention it again? What was that? The husk?
Like the end of the process of the olive press was like this big pile of leftovers, which is a mixture of, you know, everything that is not oil out of the olive. People use that for heating. Like they press it and turn it into like hard objects that are used later on for heating. And like, you know, we don't have too much wood, so we use it as a replacement for firewood.
Yeah.
An interesting thing that people do with the with the olive nuts, like after they eat the olive pickles, and that's usually like something that we know happens mostly in prison. Like it's important to mention that between the year 1967 and the year 2019, the state of Israel sentenced nearly 1 million Palestinians in Israeli military courts. So when you are in prison and you are lucky to get olives, you take the nuts and you shape them into like bracelets, for example. Like this bracelet is made of, you know, olive nuts, not by prisoners, but by a women organization from Jordan Valley. But like you can turn them into also prayer beads. Like you can just remove the top of it sometimes, and it's hollow from within, so you can easily like pin it with a needle. There are many creative things that are happening with you know, with the olive nuts.
Yeah, I know. You know, Baha, this is the first time. That is the first time I ever seen like freshly pressed olive oil and the process of olive oil extraction itself. It's so interesting, and I believe
it's very deafening.
Yeah,
like you go into the olive mill having, you know, normal hearing abilities, you come out deaf.
Okay, that's funny. I believe there are more end products from the olive trees other than the olive oil, right? We know the soap and then the pickle oils, and there's also the wood crafts, as you mentioned in the video. So for the wood crafts, you mentioned that about the production of the crucifixes or the cross made from the wood of the trees. So, and it is because of the large number of the Christian pilgrims visiting the Palestine, right? So maybe can you please like elaborate on why do the Christian pilgrims visiting Palestine? And this is Christians from all over the world. Yeah.
You know, the state of Israel have been in control of Palestine primarily from 1949, but completely from 1967. And because it's an extension of Europe, and because it has a European ideology, it have turned Palestinian like pilgrim sites to, let's say, tourism destinations. Like imagine Muslims going to Mecca for tourism, you know, which is actually like takes away the sacredness of and the holiness of the place. So many of the tourists like are brainwashed into believing that the Holy Land is in Israel, and they just want to come visit the birthplace of Christ. They want to visit the Holy Sepulchre. They want to visit Nazareth, and those places as if they were like Israeli sites. The state of Israel have been dominating tourism in Palestine, and it's carried out for propaganda means. Like an Israeli Minister of Defense once said that he would license a Palestinian to fly a fighting jet before he would license a Palestinian to become a tour guide. Like, you know, because you know, they dominate the story and they dominate the narrative, and they don't want a Palestinian in the picture. Because of the mass, the high numbers of Christian pilgrims that come through Israeli tour agencies, Palestinians like see all those people around and have like developed a craft targeting like Christian tourists, like because you have a foreigner coming in and he wants like a souvenir from this land. So the Palestinian produces the souvenir, and it's primarily like motivated by financial purposes. It's not motivated by political nor religious purposes. Like also, it's very important to know like the majority of the workers on those Christian crafts are Palestinian Muslims. So they are not.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
And in the end of the day, if like there is a financial opportunity in something, you just focus on the financial gain.
Yeah.
We actually try to break through this and try to remind people that olive wood is a piece of Palestine and should not be like done for political or Christian reasons, but it has to be a representation of all Palestinians. And that's where the idea of like olive wood prayer beads that we sent to Ezra like earlier this year have come from, because we also like work on with some Palestinian families that like, you know, we want a piece of Palestine to be in the hands of people as a piece of Palestine. We don't want it to be like, I got a crucifix from the Holy Land.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Right now, I'm sorry to cut, but right now we have a girl from schools in Malawati, like 50 students are joining our live stream right now. And then there's also 50 students and teachers from Khadijah Girls School joining in on YouTube. And yeah, there's a lot of people joining us today. Say hi a little bit.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Yeah. Oh my God.
So I will go with the one question for now. Do you produce enough oil to export? Can we Malaysians buy your olive oil? This is from Zorina Khalid on Zoom.
There are like companies that buy the farmers' products and make it available for export. But I want to let everyone know that like Palestinian olive oil is very expensive, not only because of the quality, but also because of the export, like the shipping measures. If once again, the state of Israel is in control of the borders. So if we want to get a product of Palestine, Israel would not even let it out if it says product of Palestine or produce of Palestine.
Yeah.
There are ways to get Palestinian olive oil to different corners around the world. Like currently, I'm trying to get some olive oil for a family who lives in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and it has been like only the shipment for 14 kg has been around like $120. So it's the olive oil itself is very expensive, and the shipping costs are expensive. And people do it because they want to have a taste of Palestine.
Yeah, of course.
Not because they want to have olive oil in their in their cuisine.
Yeah, you mentioned before you mentioned just now because of the occupation. So, you know, the price and stuff. So, and also we can see in the video the apartheid wall right next to the olive trees, right next to it. So, just how do you think the occupation itself, because that is like the symbol of the occupation itself, right? So how do the occupation, you think, affects the exports of the products, like in general or stuff? Because I know you do marketing to the Jordan mostly, but what about in general? Yeah.
Once again, like the wall is not the main obstacle. Like the wall is an outcome of Israeli control.
Yeah.
And its purpose is to separate people from their land and people from people. Like Palestinians live on the other side of that wall. Like, just remember, like on one side of the wall you saw, there are Palestinians. On the other side of the wall you saw, there are Palestinians. There are nearly 2 million Palestinians on the other side of the Israeli wall. So the wall is about fragmentation and separation of Palestinians from Palestinians and Palestinians from their land. There are about 600,000 olive trees that are on the other side of the wall. that are owned by Palestinians on one side. So even in the town where I live near Bethlehem, like people are allowed to see their trees, but they're not allowed to touch them because of an Israeli wall that separates people from their land. There are ways to, like, for example, when we ship the olive wood prayer beads to Malaysia, we had to send it to Jordan, and from Jordan, it will be shipped to Malaysia. So there are, let me put it this way, the state of Israel imposes the restrictions, and we find ways to go around those restrictions, because there are always ways. Like if there's a will, there is a way. So when Israel like blocks our roads, it doesn't mean like our life stops. It means that we need to be creative in figuring out a way to get where we want to get. So yeah, the restrictions are only to make life inconvenient for people, to force them to give up. But for many of us, the restrictions are a call for being creative in overcoming, in the process of overcoming the restrictions.
Yeah.
So there is a way.
Oh, okay. So there's a question from Siti Fatimah Abbas asking, are the olive oil sold in shops in areas around Al-Aqsa truly Palestinian olive oil, or is it Israel olive oil?
When it comes to Palestinian olive oil, it's like the Palestinian olive oil cannot be, here, like the Israelis would try to market Israeli oil. But once again, like the Israeli oil produced by Israelis, it's irrigated. It's not as, I would say the nutrition value of it is not as good as the one you get from Palestinian olive trees, because once again, it's motivated by profit. This is why they waste more than 5,000 cubic meters of water to produce a ton. And it's usually like shipped outside, because agriculture in Israel is used as a marketing value. It's not used, like they want to market the name Israel. They want to market the brand Israel as if they were producers of olive oil. But once again, Palestinian olive oil is produced from trees that are hundreds and thousands of years old. 1 year they produce very good, and these are like the generous years, and the second year it does not produce as good. So it has a good produce every second year. And if you want to abuse olive trees to make a lot of profit in 1 year, then you would not actually depend on the traditional way of Palestinian harvesting, or the Palestinian olive industry, let's say. There is a way to tell, there is a way to tell if the olive oil is Palestinian or the olive oil is Israeli, and it's the brand. I do not think any Palestinian would tell you that the oil that they have is Israeli, and at the same time, Israeli will brand the olive oil as Israeli to give the impression that they are producing that as well. It's very different from dates. The date production is predominantly Israeli date production, and we have businessmen who are motivated by money on the expense of identity and rights, who would get dates from Israeli settlers and package it as if it was made by Palestinians in order to sell it in Jerusalem and in Palestinian markets. But that's a different story. It happens with dates, it doesn't happen with oil.
Okay. Baha, you mentioned about the Palestinians planting olive trees for the future generations. And I remember you mentioned a proverb, Arabic proverb. Maybe we can end this live chit chat this time before the video. Maybe you can mention it again, about the olive tree. The proverb.
The proverb is they planted speaking of the past generations, they planted, so we eat. We plant, so they shall eat. So the past generations like blessed us with those plants, and we should get that wisdom to plant for the future generations.
Yeah,
like
selfless gesture.
Yeah, it's and like literally, we do not know the names of people who left us with those blessings, let's say. And I, for one, like every year, like every time I get to plant olive trees, and next season, hopefully, like we'll plant about 3,000 olive trees. That's the thing in my mind, is like, I hope that this tree that we are putting on the ground in 1,000 years will be picked by somebody who would not even know our names, you know?